Hey everyone, and welcome back to the chunkiest roundup we've done in a while. Delays have hit the industry darn hard, with multiple titles being impacted. Valve has got news. Japan also might be getting actually a bit evil when it comes to controlling citizens' gaming habits, and there's even more. We've got torrent marketing, Sony coming to PC, and even more past that. I mean, bloody hell, there's a lot to cover in today's roundup, so if you're into that, be sure to like, sub, ring that bell, and with that, let's get going. So, delay season, it is well and truly underway. It's absolutely slaughtered our early 2020 games video that we had planned, and, well, Square Enix have announced this week that both their upcoming Avengers title and Final Fantasy VII Remake are going to be pushed back. Now, for Final Fantasy VII, that's been moved back just over a month, with the Avengers being pushed back around 3 months. In terms of dates, that's March 3rd to April 11th, while the Avengers is now going to be releasing on September 4th, rather than May 15th. And in terms of reasoning, I mean, it's pretty much the standard stuff that they've said. It's fine-tuning, polishing, high standards, the sort of the average thing you hear. The Avengers new release window, I mean, that does look to me like a play for a bit more cross-gen appeal, being closer to the new console release dates, while for Final Fantasy VII, I've got to imagine that's maybe something smaller, like an issue with Sony certification, something like that. I mean, given the complexities of releasing a game, I kind of doubt that it's polishing time. But anyway, with the Avengers, maybe they thought that by moving that much, they'd be avoiding Cyberpunk. If so, joke's on them, because Cyberpunk 2077's release date has been pushed back from April 16th to September 17th, and in a statement published on Twitter by CD Projekt Red, they said that because of the sheer size of the game world, they just simply need more time to finish playtesting, fixing, and polishing. And like with the Avengers, it's another sizable delay, and again, a part of me thinks it's a bit of a play for cross-gen appeal and a desire to hit those two launch windows a bit closer together, but I also do think that, yeah, it's a bloody massive game, and it's probably a little bit behind. Then again, though, in a call with investors, CD Projekt Red's joint CEO confirmed that the studio, it had been requiring some crunch during the development of Cyberpunk 2077. Now, last year, the studio did introduce a non-obligatory crunch policy to increase developer care, and staff were encouraged to push back against leadership and against managers if the workload became too much. And it seems like this could actually be what's happened here. And ultimately, look, with crunch, at best, that is sacrificing your long-term productivity in the name of the short term. So in the best case, it's for that final push. But if crunch sustains itself for too long, then the toll on staff decreases productivity to the point where those extra hours and extra overtime pay are actually a net negative in the amount of work that your company can get done. Now, this poses a massive problem when games are delayed. You think you got a crunch to your release date, but then your release date shifted and you're still crunching. And sometimes in the industry, that is referred to as a death march. Now, I have been seeing a lot of very pro-crunch sentiment out there from, just floating around the internet, I suppose. And, there are times where crunch kind of does end up needing to be done just to get over the finish line. But I think what maybe some are missing out on is when crunch is actually something that is planned in the conception stage of a game and the conception stage of just the overall project management. And what that really shows is a situation where, crunch has been planned for, but because crunch is chaotic and the real world is chaotic and things can change, no plan survives contact with the enemy. I think that's a statement we've all heard before. And the thing is that when you use crunch, you're decreasing your agility, you're opening yourself up to a lot of long-term problems, and that kind of is what seems to have maybe happened here. I mean, certainly given CDPR's history, that could be a thing. That said, yes, they, were quite a bit more reasonable last year with their new commitment, and as we said, maybe it is just that the staff actually called them and it's saying, look, we actually cannot do a quality game if we are being crunched this hard, we need to delay. And if it is the case that CD Projekt Red decided to do that delay, then yeah, more power to them. That's the right thing to do by their staff. And ultimately, when the staff are in a better state, when they're more productive and it's not just complete chaos, they're going to be able to make a better game with more content and less bugs. And obviously, that is what we want. We do not want something that has just been crunched out the gate like Anthem that is a big old mess. Of course, I'm very excited for this game. It's probably going to be one of the games of the year. I mean, I just can't wait. So yeah, it's a bit sad for me that it's being delayed because I'm really into it, but you know what? It's probably for the best. The next up, a rather different story. So, Outer Wilds is a wonderful experimental game. It really is brilliant, but it also had an experimental release, one that was dramatic. I mean, it went from Fig Fun funding to Epic Exclusive, which a lot of people didn't like, I mean, obviously, over to Xbox Game Pass. How did it pan out? Well, their co-lead told GameIndustry.biz that it's actually worked out very well for them, especially Games Pass. He actually believes that Game Pass brought in a whole bunch of people who would have never known about that game otherwise, and that the subscription services like Game Pass are going to impact the games industry very significantly. And this is where I think things get more interesting. He said that he thinks they're a perfect place for risky and weird games. And it's that thing, I think, where premium indies that, are just kind of almost self-marketable because they're weird and different. They're actually really good for getting people into a subscription service. But then also, it's the type of game that's very hard to financially justify because, it's not market tested, right? You can't really gauge the size of the market for something like Outer Wilds. I mean, if you're making a niche indie bullet hell shooter, you're going to know how many people like niche indie bullet hell shooters. Less so for something like Outer Wilds. And as they said, yeah, those more risky experimental games that can sometimes push gaming forward as a medium could be finding a home on places like Game Pass. And if that's the case, then hey, fair enough. I mean, if it leads to more good games, then I'm basically all for it. And then next up, Torrance. So, Danger Gazers released on Steam a few weeks back, and really, it did not make much of a splash. I didn't hear about it, you probably didn't hear about it, but that changed after the developer uploaded a torrent of the game to the Pirate Bay. They said, there's no catch, there's no Steam-only features, just the fully functional game. That's what they put on the Pirate Bay. In return, the developer asked that if players enjoyed the game, that they would consider buying it at full price. Now, since then, Shoto estimates, the studio, that sales of the game have increased by 400%. And indeed, many Steam reviews are stating that the title became an instant purchase once people saw the developer release a torrent for players who actually couldn't afford to buy the game. And then also, it's got twice as many wish lists as it had before. Now, on the Steam algorithm, because, YouTube is about gaming and algorithm, Steam is as well. Wish lists are one of the most important things, so that's really big. And then even some people actually donated more than the game costs, and the developer said they've received countless emails from people who've been showing their support. So it's a really nice, heartwarming story, actually. I mean, it's hard for small games to be seen, and this actually worked. That said, it could devalue the game a bit. It could cannibalize future sales opportunities. There's a bit of what people say versus what they do. I mean, yes, more sales came in. It was a 400% increase, but 400% over what? I think that's the main question here. Certainly, this is not something that will work for everybody, but I think if it is for a niche community that really appreciates that type of content, generally speaking, yeah, that niche will turn around and will be very generous. I mean, you only need to look at certain Patreons, right, where there's a really quite a small audience, but they love the content that's being produced and they're more than happy to support it. So in a situation like that, in a niche or more niche game like that, it's really, really nice to see. All right, next, some creepy business. So a Japanese prefecture is currently proposing something absolutely wild. It is an ordinance that could limit the time that minors can spend using smartphones, computers, or, of course, playing the greatest evil on the planet, video. Now, the prefecture's assembly proposal includes a 1 hour a day gaming limit for under 18s, rising to 90 minutes in the weekends. How generous. Minors of junior high age and younger would be required to have devices shut off by 9 p.m., while older children have until 10 p.m. How generous. The draft does not include a penalty, but it does call on parents and guardians to help enforce the limits. And the prefecture hopes that this proposal will spur a little bit more of a comprehensive discussion and action from the main Japanese government, and a vote is actually planned for sometime in February. And you know what? This sucks. I mean, it kind of mirrors some moves made by China, which is generally something you never want to be doing. I'm against this type of thing entirely. I mean, if you think about different regions of the world, in a lot of, say, maybe the UK, the US, a lot of Europe, there's a sort of a big individualism sort of thing going on, right? And I would hope that that would be a bulwark where people would say, look, it's healthy to maybe play a reasonable amount of games and to go outside a bit and to have a balanced life. But the second you tell me I have to do that and, impose rules upon me, government, get out. And I feel like that's what the States would do. I think that's what the UK would do. So I hope that this is not something that sort of creeps over to the West, because certainly seeing what China does with social credit score and limiting people's freedoms when it comes to how they enjoy their free time, it is absolutely disgusting. It is a complete quashing of human just individualism, of freedom of expression. It absolutely sucks. And, even in the UK, right, and all that stuff that was going on last year, we actually saw some of China's moves being cited in a positive light. And a lot of people supported that because they were pro-anti-loot box. but we've got to be careful about this legislation stuff. And I know it's boring stuff. I know it's not the sort of thing that's big clickbait thumbnails, talking about stuff like what's going on here with Japan, but I think it is one of the most important things for us to spread awareness of on this channel. So it's always something I'm going to be committed to. And then speaking of things that would absolutely have me violating any gaming time law that would ever come in, well, Half-Life Alyx's release is only a few months away, and Valve are actually still struggling to keep up demand for the Index VR headset. Now, it's their flagship VR hardware, it's incredibly expensive, it's also incredible, and it's now sold out in 31 regions across the globe. A Valve spokesperson told Road to VR that they're working to build more units to meet the demand, and that they are targeting to have those units in stock before Half-Life Alyx actually ships, but it's pretty insane, isn't it? This could be high-end VR's big system seller. I mean, PSVR was great, but it was lower quality, often smaller games, smaller experiences. Things like this, with Alyx, really could push the industry forward. Then next up, Sony Interactive Entertainment will reportedly not host its annual Destination PlayStation event and instead hand off control to a third party. Now, you've probably not heard about PlayStation Destination, but it's a behind-closed-doors business meeting with third parties. It's been suggested that this decision about handing off control could actually be so that Sony can work on plans to unveil the PS5 officially. Now, the timings here could match up quite nicely because Sean Layden earlier told CNET that purchasing discussions were happening in February, as June would be too late for the Christmas holiday season for the retailers. So if that stuff's all the case, and if Sony does want to get the PS5 in shops by Christmas, then the unveiling would actually have to happen pretty darn sharpish. And then sticking with Sony, acclaimed PS4 exclusive Horizon Zero Dawn could actually be coming to PC this year, and we've even seen other rumors of even more Sony games also coming to PC in the future. Now, this has been rumored for quite some time indeed, but it looks like it might actually be coming out because Sony, reportedly are looking to get their games on more platforms beyond their consoles, and it also even seems like Dreams might not be far behind it, which would be very exciting. Now, of course, Microsoft, they've been very open about wanting to create a cooperative gaming ecosystem rather than a divided series of platforms. I mean, probably because they want to win at that particular game because that's what works for their strengths. But, if we're getting first-party Sonys over to PC, that would actually be Sony following suit. I think that would be pretty darn interesting for the state of the industry. I mean, I've got to imagine it would be with a massive delay because Sony will want to be pushing their consoles, obviously. Now, a final story and a follow-on from yesterday's OWL story. So they've announced that a goat skin for Brigitta is coming out. Now, that's a skin that's, of course, poking fun at the 3-3 goats meta that ran rampant in the last OWL season and, was extremely boring. And, of course, Brigitta was one of the main characters in that meta. An oddly self-aware move from Blizzard Entertainment, which, it's nice that they're poking fun at themselves and a little bit at Overwatch in general, but, still a sad situation. And if you missed out on it, we put out a report yesterday on basically a bit of a collapsing of elements of the OWL, just key staff leaving, a lot of it being this, esports as business, big corporate leaders coming from Fox News. It really is just one of those stories of financial interests kind of quashing what we love about gaming, what many people love about esports. I think it's a really important watch, so hey, if you'd like to, it's just over there on the channel. And with that, thank you very much for watching this video, and I will see you next time.